President Muhammadu Buhari restates commitment in conducting free, fair, and credible elections in 2019.
Kano All Progressive Congress receives more than 10,000 supporters of Senator Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, who defected from PDP to APC.
Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, ready to curb vote buying in 2019 general elections.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall be looking at the legal profession and sustenance of democracy.
There is no gainsaying the fact that the legal profession is an important stakeholder in democratic governance.
Little wonder, therefore, that members of the legal profession have been and are still seen as a forefront in the struggle for democratic governance.
And as part of efforts to build the capacity of practitioners in the profession and contribute to societal development, the Nigerian Bar Association makes it a point of duty to organize a forum annually where members of the bar and bench, as well as leaders of the nation, come together to rub minds on the state of affairs of the nation.
The conference has indeed become a pivotal platform that builds the capacity of legal practitioners and also provides a forum for discussion of key national issues in line with the constitutional mandate of the legal profession.
This year is not an exception, as thousands of lawyers converged on Abuja to perform the annual tradition with the theme, Transition, Transformation, and Sustainable Institutions.
The event was declared open by the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, who described the theme of the conference as appropriate in the light of Nigeria's contemporary domestic and global challenges.
And as the nation prepares for another general election, the President urged members of the bench and bar to work towards upholding and improving the sanctity of the nation's judiciary and electoral institutions, which he said plays a fundamental role in the sustenance and growth of our democracy.
So what needs to be done to ensure smooth transition and sustained democratic governance in the country? What role should the bar and bench play to ensure economic and political development in the nation? Welcome to the program. These are the issues we shall be looking at. I am Femi Okewo, and with the pleasure of particularly welcoming you to this edition.
And I joined Femi to also welcome you to this important edition of the program for Good Morning Nigeria today. My name is Kirian Umar, and of course we broadcast live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, in Abuja, the capital city of Nigeria. And as always, the complimentary part of the program shall be brought to you, which of course include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. Well, the morning news is right now with Stella Inamete. Hello, Stella.
Hello, Kirian and Femi. Good morning, and here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari has restated the unshakable resolve of his administration in conducting free, fair, and credible elections in 2019. The president gave the assurance while exchanging views with the British Prime Minister, Theresa May. Several agreements aimed at deepening relations between Nigeria and the United Kingdom were signed after the high-level talks.
We are pleased that Europe and China are conducting an in-depth study to see how it can be recharged by interviews and transfer from Central African Republic to Chad. So that the people for fishing, animal husbandry, all seasons farming. Millions of people in Nigeria stand to benefit most than most other countries.
And we, of course, will also be looking to work together to step up our work on shared security threats, be it threats from Boko Haram or human trafficking, a subject on which you and I have spoken previously. And of course also cooperate on tackling corruption and lifting people out of poverty.
Meanwhile, relations between Nigeria and the United Kingdom go deep and can be traced to colonial times. Our correspondent examines the state of diplomatic relations between the two countries.
They were former colonial masters, but that's gone now. We're an independent country, and they appreciate us to that extent. And we also appreciate them to the extent that they've been receptive to us at different levels. Okay? And I don't see this reception dying in a century to come.
At the global political level, we pretty much share the same ideas and values on a lot of issues, especially in the multilateral setting. They've supported some of our candidatures for international organizations, and we're supporting some of theirs. So the relations are very good.
While preparing for post-Brexit era, Britain is shopping for new alliances and seeks to strengthen existing trade ties. It is for this reason that the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, is in Africa, visiting Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya.
Relationship that has been that long, not good enough. Not good enough. There have been constraints on all sides. Is that they have the UK, the Prime Minister has been laying out is excellent for the Nigerian economy. They're raising the level of ambition to a very, very high level.
So it's about time we begin to take advantage of such openings to see how we can best benefit from every relationship that we're going to go in.
Africa's problems will not be solved by government and grants, but by entrepreneurs, and Nigeria will welcome investors in the various sectors of the economy. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo said this when he inspected a technology hub in Abuja, accompanied by the visiting UK Minister for Africa, Harriet Baldwin. The minister at the occasion said £70 million have been earmarked for investment by Britain into the Nigerian economy.
We're in an excellent place to do a lot of very creative and very innovative things. We've seen so much here already today, and I think we're in a very, very good place to make the real difference in business that we want to see.
Meanwhile, the Cross River State chairman of All Progressives Congress, Matthew Achigbe, says all is set for the party to take over governance in Cross River. He stated this in Abuja after his formal inauguration by APC National Working Committee, presided over by its national chairman, Comrade Adams Oshomole.
I would set the machinery in motion for us to move to our various local government areas, encourage them to sell our party to the people so that we will not have any challenge when the time comes, come 2019 polls.
Senator Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, a former governor of Kano State, has declared his intention to contest for the president of Nigeria under the People's Democratic Party, PDP.
Today, I declare that I'm going to vie for the office of the President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, under the platform of People's Democratic Party.
And back in his home state, Kano, the All Progressives Congress has formally received more than 10,000 supporters of Senator Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, who defected from the All Progressives Congress, APC, to the People's Democratic Party. They described their decision to pitch tent with the ruling APC as patriotic and respect to President Muhammadu Buhari, as well as their readiness to support his re-election bid.
The party is now gradually becoming stable. The economy is being gradually consolidated. So there is need for them to continue to support the APC.
They have seen what His Excellency Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje has been doing to the youth in the state. That's why they have decided today to dump their parties, the PDP, and join the APC under.
It is a popular saying that since birds have learned how to fly without perching, hunters have also learned how to shoot without missing. This is probably the game between INEC and desperate politicians who indulge in vote buying, as well as those who use the social media to launch fake news for personal gains, with the attendant catastrophic challenge of electoral violence and mistrust. So how can INEC overcome this 21st century challenge?
Voter education and voter sensitization so that citizens will never allow their votes to be sold during elections. To achieve that, we need to work with you.
Will we go back home, put ourselves, agencies together and articulate our position? And we'll present it holistically here, what we think best, to support, we'll do to support INEC to have a very successful outing in 2019 in terms of publicity.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Femi and Kirian after the break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortine Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortine Power Guard.
You in the air-conditioned office with the itchy throat. Strepsils. Girl in the spotlight with the raspy throat. Strepsils. You in the pollution. Yes, you. Dry throat. Strepsils. Hello in the downpour with the scratchy throat. Take Strepsils. Strepsils, with its soothing medicinal ingredients, will heal the harm done to your throat from external factors. Strepsils! Strepsils! Strepsils, for a dry, itchy, raspy, scratchy throat.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three people.
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome.
You take that one.
Yeah, take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobu to come to chocolate rice made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir.
And your shirts are always so white.
I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results.
Shh, it's our little secret.
It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
Central Bank of Nigeria imposes sanctions totaling 5.87 billion naira on 4 commercial banks for violation of Nigeria's extant laws, among other offenses. Details on Business News with Joy Uzo.
Welcome to Business News. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, says it has imposed heavy sanctions totaling 5.87 billion naira on 4 banks under its regulatory purview and asked SAME to refund the sum of $8.134 billion for what it described as flagrant violation of extant laws and regulations of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, including the Foreign Exchange Monitoring and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1995 of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Foreign Exchange Manual 2006. The 4 banks that have come under the sledgehammer of the CBN for the violations are Standard Chartered Bank, Stanbic IBTC, Citibank, and Diamond Bank. Announcing the decision in Abuja, CBN's Director, Corporate Communications, Isaac Okarafo, said the actions of the bank became necessary following allegations of remittance of foreign exchange with irregular certificates of capital importation issued on behalf of some offshore investors of MTN Nigeria Communications Limited and subsequent investigations carried out by the Apex Bank in March 2018. Moving on, Nigeria Customs Service has declared 118 billion naira as revenue collected so far in the month of August. The figure, according to the Customs Comptroller General, Colonel Hamid Ibrahim Ali, is expected to rise up to 130 billion naira by the end of the month. This, according to him, is as a result of the resilience of customs personnel in its revenue drive for the country.
I've not seen the outcome of yesterday, and we still have today, tomorrow, and Friday. So with this means that, by the grace of God, if all things goes well, we are looking at more than 130 billion naira at the end of this month, August, which is the highest ever collected in the history of Nigerian Customs Service.
And to Petroleum Matters, Chairman House Committee on the Petroleum Resources Downstream Sector, Akinlaja Joseph, has called for the revamping of Nigeria refineries to make them function at optimal capacity for local consumption. The lawmaker who commended the NNPC for the sufficient availability of the premium motor spirit also advocated that efforts must be made to tackle the irregularities in the sector. Dredging of Eastern Pulse he noted as some efforts that needs urgent attention, as the nation is losing much from their underperformance, and developing them will go a long way in decongesting their papa ports.
Some of these ports work, but not to their maximum capacity. But the pressure is definitely on the papa.
And from the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the bulls emerged again on Tuesday as the index appreciated by 0.58% to close at 35,516 points. Allmark Insurance, Stanbic and Maybecker were the most active to boost market turnover. Total, Flour Mill, and GT Bank led the gainers, while GlaxoSmith, Forte Oil, and Eti led the losers. The stock market report wraps up business news. Many thanks for watching. I am Joy Uzo.
Thank you indeed, Joy, for that business report. Newspaper review is up ahead on Good Morning Nigeria.
And welcome to this segment where we take a look at some of the burning stories on our national dailies. And I start with the Sun, Daily Sun. And the banner story is about the National Working Committee meeting. APC NWC disagrees over direct primaries. A rider to it will comply with INEC electoral guidelines. Still on the front page of the Daily Sun, on the top right corner, we go for political stories there. Ex-governor, Kano governor declares for presidency, all not well with Nigeria. That is Rabiu Kwankwaso, the ex-Kano state governor, saying as he declares for the presidency. And then also a rider to that story, Bafarawa Turaki, pick PDP nomination forms. Below that, we have the trending Nigeria-British relationship and the visit of the British Prime Minister to Nigeria. Nigeria-Britain signed defense and economic deals as Prime Minister May meets Buhari. Of course, just next to that, to the left, is the picture story of the President and Prime Minister May, with the caption, May, the August visitor. And I can say, in August, meets Buhari. To finish up the front page of the Daily Sun, we have Saraki consults Jonathan in Abuja, another political story. And then for the environment, Kebbi, Niger, Kwara, Kogi, 3 other states at risk of flood. That's from the Nigeria Hydrological Agency. We conclude the Daily Sun with a sad security story. 8 killed, 95 houses burnt in fresh Plateau attack.
All right, now let's turn to the Nigerian pilot, and we'll take the major headline this morning. Buhari meets May. It's also part of what Femi had just read out on the Daily Sun. Buhari meets May. We have 4 riders to that headline. Assures her of free, fair elections in 2019. Boasts that APC has done well to win at various levels. Welcomes UK's support to strengthen democratic institutions. Says multi-party democracy has put politicians on their toes. The full text of the story is on page 4 of the Nigerian pilot. Now, below the photograph that we have on the Nigerian pilot, which of course shows Theresa May and the president, that this exchange of what has been signed between Nigeria and the UK. Now, 2019, senators, reps agree or agreed rob INEC of 45.6 billion naira. Now, below that, we have some striking stories. Ekiti Election Petition Tribunal, fire me APC, hire 35 lawyers. Defection, Nasarawa Assembly declares members' seat vacant. That's on page 9. 8 killed, 95 houses burnt in Plateau, says the police. The story is on page 4. Now, 2023, prove your innocence on alleged secret pact with Tinubu, Haneze tells Buhari. All right, now we have INEC requires 2,600 vehicles for elections in Ebonyi State. That says the Electoral Commissioner in that state, Femi.
Now to the Punch. The main story is a financial story and illegal funds repatriation. CBN fines 4 banks 5.8 billion naira, other lenders, and then MTN to refund $8.1 billion. The rider to that story is Standard Chartered Bank fined Now, those are breakdowns of the major fines of these banks. And then we go a little, still up of the front page. The flood alert kickstarts the front page on the top part. Flood may hit Niger, Kogi, Delta, and 4 other states. And then a security story below that. Suspected herdsmen attack Plateau villages, kill pastor, wife, kids, burn 98 houses. And the political story on Kwankwaso's declaration, he talks about Eagle Square belongs to all Nigerians. Saraki is saying that. We move to the lower part of the Punch with the picture story of President Muhammadu Buhari and Prime Minister May discussing bilateral issues. And then, of course, it goes with President's reassurance, I am for free, fair 2019 elections. Buhari assures Theresa May. Other stories on the front page are the Bafarawa story. Bafarawa rejects consensus presidential candidate for PDP. Police nab prophet for allegedly killing lover for rituals. Just part of the front page stories on the Punch.
All right, family. Let's take a look at some of the headlines that we have read out already. And what the striking one is that of the development in Plateau State, where a pastor, wife, and kids killed and 95 houses burnt down. It does seem that the Plateau crisis has continued unabated, even after all the efforts are being made by the government to quell whatever that ignites the crisis. What could be done on the Plateau?
Just a sincere and continuous pursuit of peace between these people. Security experts will tell you that they are not surprised at this because possibly it's not a justification. They would always tell you it's a reprisal. Some days ago, we heard of the herdsman whose cattle was rustled and all that. So, but that should give a signal, particularly when something happens. Since we know there would always be reprisals, I think it should give, it should get the security personnel alert and ready for whatever may come. But I think something similar to what has happened in Zamfara could also happen in the Plateau. We thought we were having some respite in this Plateau and Benue, but once a while these things crop up again. Yes. I think the federal government can be more forthright in deployment of security agencies to all these troubled spots.
Now, on the issue of MTN to refund 8.134 billion naira, they said illegally repatriated from Nigeria, and that some banks have aided this repatriation, which of course brought about the issue of asking the banks to also pay, some fine because they are connected to the repatriation. But perhaps we do not know the full details of the reason for the for the refund being asked for by CBN. But we are not financial experts.
This story possibly is a testimony to the strengthening of our institutions. The institutions are supposed to be able to trigger actions when there are violations of Nigerian laws. And I think this is one area that the authorities have stood up to do the right thing. Without anyone making noise first. They noticed it. They are the regulatory organ. I think the Communications Commission are the regulatory organ. They know what happens. So you as an external foreign investor, you are free to repatriate your funds, but it must be done according to the laws of Nigeria.
Yes.
And I think that's the penalty.
Perhaps in due course, we will be able to get the response of the MTN, because, of course, they're going to respond to this. All right, now, moving ahead, let's take just a few stories on this day newspaper. Of course, we have told you about the CBN ordering MTN to refund 8.134 billion naira illegally repatriated from Nigeria. That's the major headline on this day newspaper. And of course, below that, we also have the banks that have actually been named as collaborators, to that. Now, we have Buhari assures May of free and fair election. We've read that in other newspapers. Meets Ambode, seeks sustainable UK-Lagos relations and all that. Now, from this UK-Lagos relations, Lagos, of course, was the anchor place for the colonial masters when they came. And it seems that May wants to sustain that relationship.
Apart from the colonial history, I think there's no doubt that Lagos is the commercial nerve center for Nigeria. And anyone coming into Nigeria to invest would first want to explore its possibilities in Lagos. I think that is what is happening.
That is why she made that visit. Okay. Now, you still have the Independence.
Yes, the Independence talks about polls, 2019 polls, the reassurance of the president about the 2019 polls. 2019 polls will be free and fair, President Buhari assures British Prime Minister. Then the rider asset repatriation to Nigeria could be slow, says Theresa May. Those are some of the points that she brings out as she tries to engender a trade relationship between Nigeria. And these are the areas possibly that we should be looking at subsequently. UK announces £70 million program to create 100,000 jobs. Good story there for Nigeria, as we look for ways of engaging our youth.
Yeah, that's good coming from a country like Britain, because, this Brexit, if it's successfully down, then many countries in Africa may be benefiting from Britain. Those have been left behind for a long time because of the EU agreement. And from the movement of May this time around on the African continent, it does seem that Britain wants to re-strengthen relationship with the African countries. Because, of course, if you have to do business in the third world, so to speak, Nigeria cannot be, left out.
The countries she has visited are particularly strategic. One in West Africa, one in Eastern Africa, and one in Southern Africa. South Africa, Kenya, and I think she's proceeding to Kenya from Nigeria, and then Nigeria for in the West African sub-region. So they are very strategic, and they are key strength for economic relationship.
And you may recall that yesterday in our program, we did mention here that she is actually on an economic mission.
Sure.
All right. Now, let's go to the editorials for today. The editorial for today is from the New Telegraph, and it's boosting Nigeria's oil refining capacity. Now, let's take some lines from there. The recent initiative by the federal government to enhance crude oil refining capacity has raised the prospect of Nigeria becoming self-sufficient in refined petroleum products and gradually ending years of unprofitable swaps. Since it has become almost impossible to overhaul the existing refineries with several failed turnaround maintenance programs or build a new one from scratch. Femi, You know, yesterday too, there was a story on this, on the two refineries that are about to be built. Okay. And many Nigerians have also opined that this ought to have happened several years ago.
It's a sorry state for the Nigerian oil economy, which is actually what we depend on. That for more than 30 years, much more than 30 years, we never added one refinery to the 4 refineries we have had. Due credit to this government that is planning to put on 2 refineries all within a space of 3 years. We need it. That is the problem about importation of refined petroleum. Or else that we have no business paying subsidy for importation of if we have enough refineries to take care of our local needs, we will not be
importing. Of course, you know, so many countries that are even within members of OPEC have long time stopped exporting crude oil. Instead, they export refined oil, which of course is more expensive.
Which is what we too are supposed to be doing. We have the crude. We are supposed to be processing it and exporting the finished products.
And not just the petroleum. There are other products like diesel, kerosene, and what have you. And I recall that during the Obasanjo administration, licenses were issued to some persons and organizations for the establishment of refineries in this country. But something happened along the line that nobody was able to, do that. Except for now that Dangote has also come into it and is promising that he's going to have one of the best refineries in Africa.
That brings us again to strengthening our institutions. Our institutions are supposed to be corruptless. They are supposed to pursue national agenda. The national agenda was that we give you license, you do a few other businesses, you explore our crude, but you build refineries. But you find that these people collected licenses, explored the crude, but never built licenses, and everybody kept quiet. And these people, in fact, went into importation of fuel, and we were still paying subsidies for it. And so now it is heartening, a glad story to see that something is being done about strengthening our own local production of oil in Nigeria.
All right,
but let me bring your attention to this APC National NWC story. Now we have somewhat of a contradictory headlines. In the Daily Sun, Daily Sun says APC NWC disagrees over direct primaries. But in Daily Independent, they say APC NEC adopts direct primaries. So, of course, direct primaries is being suggested. The suggestion here in Daily Sun is that they have not agreed to it. But Daily Independent actually says APC has already adopted.
And we read in the papers yesterday too that the governor of Lagos State saying that the constitution of the APC, of course, recommended both primaries and indirect, direct primaries and indirect primaries.
No doubt about that. So it's now for them to decide which one will favor good internal politics,
internal democracy
in the APC.
All right, that's the much we can take on this edition of Newspaper Review on Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you for staying with us up to this moment. Of course, we are going to talk about, Femi is a lawyer, and the lawyers have converged on Abuja for some days now, looking at issues concerning legal activities in the country that also has a lot to do with good democracy and good governance in Nigeria. We will return in just a moment after the break, and that's when we begin to talk about the legal profession as we have already established.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that at the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Winning in hot and dry conditions is hard. Causes the body to sweat, which attracts germs that are easily passed from one person to another.
What keeps you so cool, man?
Dettol Cool combines Dettol's protection and an invincible icy feel. For super cool confidence, use Dettol Cool.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria, junior category ages 6 to 12 and senior category ages 13 to 18. The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. For more information, please call the following numbers. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
What makes a Niger mom powerful?
I trust the power of Dettol's One Capful for bathing. The power of Dettol's One Capful protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Be 100% sure.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual.
You
have no problem.
For the three
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
You take that one.
Yes.
Take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobu to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
And to kickstart our conversation this morning, let's take this background report put together by Aisha Ubali.
The Constitution has a critical role, especially in the operation and governance process. However, the legal profession has remained very relevant in a democratic setting. Without lawyers who draft and interpret the law, running an effective democratic system may be a mirage. Though observers believe that the judiciary needs to up their game, especially in strengthening and sustaining democracy, it is also believed that the rule of law must be adhered to in ensuring a strong democratic system. From interpretation of law to addressing civil and criminal issues, the legal profession has in a large extent brought peace and sanity in the system, even though the accusation and delay of dispensation of justice has been one major challenge of the legal system. Just recently, the Nigerian Bar Association, which is seeking for a way forward, organized a conference with the theme Transition, Transformation and Sustainable Institutions, especially in the light of recent domestic and global challenges. This is aimed at addressing issues related to immediate legal practice and solutions for wider societal problems. What are some of the takeaways of the thousands of participants who attended the annual event? And how will experts in this sector change the narrative? These and more questions will be answered shortly on the program Good Morning Nigeria this morning.
And now joining us to discuss the subject matter is going to be, well, the person present here with us in the studio is Ayo Obe, who is a legal practitioner. Ayo Obe, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
And just to inform you that we also invited Paul Usoro, also a senior advocate of Nigeria, who is the incoming president of the Nigerian Bar Association. We are hoping that he's going to join us in the course of this program. To also let you know that another guest that we're also expecting to have this morning is the outgoing NBA president, Abubakar Mahmoud, is also a senior advocate of Nigeria. Femi.
Yes, you're welcome, Ayo. You are not just a legal practitioner, you are also a public commentator and a civil society personality. So you will, from the angle of the civil society, look at the legal profession in Nigeria. Let's start first from your general assessment of what the legal profession is doing to enhance Nigeria's democracy.
I think that you have to distinguish, and it's a pity that the two NBA presidents, incoming and outgoing, are not here, because I think there's a slight distinction to be made between the legal profession and members of the legal profession and the Bar Association, because obviously with anything that happens in court, you're going to have people on both sides. You're going to have both the people who are defending a position and those who are attacking it. And when it comes to democracy, any government in power tends to see its own survival as being synonymous with democracy. And therefore, the steps that they take, which will be defended by some legal practitioners in court, will be attacked and criticized by others. But there are some things that governments do which go beyond having opposing sides, because ours is an adversarial position, such as when we saw the invasion of the houses of judges, or even although it was cheered when it was said, the president's statement that national security is must take precedence over the rule of law. Okay. Statements like that. There are some things that there's no room for balance. You have to be on one side or the other.
But let's take a step back. You certainly have been in the scene, both during military government and the civilian government. Give us what you think the legal profession has been like, particularly under the civilian governance, as compared with what we had during the military government.
Well, I suppose that the essence of military government was, as a former chief judge of Lagos State once said, that the president or the military dictator in power of the day could wake up, and even in his bathroom he could issue an order, and that would become law for Nigeria. So there was no absolute certainty, even though in theory we had a constitution, we had laws, and the military government would pass laws, would go through the process of amending laws, but they could also be arbitrary as well. And they may even have devised laws that would allow them to, would in a way institutionalize their arbitrariness.
Yes.
Things like Decree 2, which we will remember was legislation that the military dictatorship passed, which allowed them to detain anybody
Yes.
on the grounds of national security. Okay? Now you compare that to now, where the Constitution takes precedence, and the Constitution provides that anybody who is detained must be brought before a court of law within a reasonable time. And a reasonable time is not an arbitrary thing, it's further defined as within 24 hours, or if the court is, if it's over a weekend, the next working day. And also there are provisions regarding the extent to which a court is near and accessible. But so that is the point. And so that any person who is being detained ought to be being detained in accordance with an order of court. Now that doesn't guarantee, by the way, that once you're taken to court and the court says detain the person, that you immediately, your rights are secured, because your case may just molder away. And I would say that one of the reasons why the Civil Liberties Organization, of which I was president for some years, was founded, was the fact that people were moldering away in prison, and they had been sent to prison custody, mostly because they'd been in court and the court had remanded them in prison custody. And yet they were still there 10, 20 years later. So it's not a guarantee, but at least it means that the court is supposed to be able to, as the saying goes, keep your case in view, rather than you're just being picked up off the streets and vanished from the Nigerian streets. Now that was, that's what the Constitution requires, but it's not something that we have seen happening.
All right.
Even particularly under this democracy or the civilian rule that we have.
All right. Thank you very much. Let us deviate a bit. There's no gainsaying, the fact that lawyers are key stakeholders in sustaining democratic principles and governance. What, in your opinion, is the contribution of the law profession in stabilizing democracy in Nigeria since the Fourth Republic in 1999?
Well, I think that the legal profession has continued to test the boundaries of the law, the Constitution, because you remember that the way the Constitution itself emerged was under very murky circumstances. In fact, we elected a president in 1999 without having seen the constitutional powers that that president was going to exercise. So the Constitution itself, we came and we started practicing and learning. So inevitably there are going to be challenges and issues that will arise. And I think that the legal profession is there at the forefront of challenging the things that can be done or cannot be done under the Constitution.
One of the qualities of the legal profession is the ability to interpret statutes, even though everybody can read and understand. But the judiciary eventually determines what the statutes mean. But lawyers are the ones that represent all facets of society. There are people who tell you that lawyers are also the problem of whether democracy or military government. They formulate the policies.
Well, the people who tell you that are the people who don't get their act together, mostly. I make particular reference to the fact that the acting chair of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission was complaining that lawyers are a problem. Now, I think there's a difference between, and it's essential that everybody understands, in a democracy, a person is entitled to have their rights determined by a court of law. And there's no point in sending somebody naked into the into the lion's den without allowing them their legal representation. And the EFCC has the opportunity to pick, because it doesn't just have the Ministry of Justice. It has the opportunity to instruct the best lawyers that it can engage, and ask them to prosecute the cases that it wants. And if they're ready to work with those lawyers will already point out to them, this is a hole in your case. If you want this prosecution to succeed, you will need to take care of this. Do you have an answer?
Do lawyers do that to their clients?
Oh, lawyers do that to their clients. If a client comes to me and says, my case depends on factors A, B, and C, and my job is not to say, well, in that case, let's go to court and we will win on factors A, B, and C. Before that, I will say, well, let's look at it, because factor A, which you are, upon which your case depends, stipulates that the sun rises in the west. And if we go to court with that, it's likely that there may be evidence to the contrary. So that may be a problem with your case. And so that's an extreme example, because it's not often as clear-cut as that. But I think it's important that we recognize that the lawyer is not just there to be the mouthpiece, but also to advise. And I would also say that I learned a lot of things from my attendance at the bar conference yesterday. But one of the most pungent was during the session yesterday afternoon, where the discussion was about the attitude of the police in preventing lawyers from accompanying their clients when they're being questioned by the police. And one of the questions from the floor, which I felt really cut to the chase on the matter, was that when the Inspector General of Police was summoned by the Senate, he knew then that he needed a lawyer to accompany him. And when he was being questioned by the Senate, he was very comfortable to say, my lawyer will answer those questions. But it's not a privilege that has been, or not, I call it a privilege. It's not a right that has been recognized in many of our police stations in the country. So, but we found that many lawyers were ready to stand their ground on these matters. So I think that if we're running a constitution-based government, then the legal profession is an essential component of that.
All right, essential component. And from the question put to you by my colleague Femi, with respect to the lawyers contributing, or rather playing a role that is not in consonance with law practice. Let me ask you this.
Did he say that?
No, he was saying that the lawyers are the problems. That's the way he put it, right? So I don't put it in another form. Right now, talking about lawyers being problems, we've heard about cases that are deliberately delayed, applying some terminologies in the legal parlance and achieving their aim. Cases that should be dispensed within 6 months last up to 3, 4, or 5 years. What is the cause of this?
Well, in the first place, the law is there to be tested. And lawyers are going to court on the basis of statutes. And that's why, on the basis of that, the administration, if I'm talking, for example, about criminal cases, the Administration of Justice,
Criminal Justice Act,
Criminal Justice Act was enacted to get over some of these delays. But the court will always have to interpret it with a view to making sure that the rights of an accused person are not trampled upon, or are not, how do I put it, do not fall by the wayside. Simply because people want things to be done quickly. But I think also that what I notice with a lot of criminal cases is that the preparation seems to be going on in the middle of the case. So that somebody has been standing trial, and then suddenly in the middle of it, we're now bringing new charges and we're asking them to plead. I think also that if I'm talking about the way that the prosecuting authorities approach matters, they tend to act as if we have to have a 100 count charge. And if we don't get all our 100 counts in, then, and to me, that is unnecessary. I often make the comparison with the cases of historical sex abuse cases that you had in the United Kingdom, where 2 charges might be brought and the person would be found guilty and the case would be dispensed of fairly rapidly. And after that, if there are more charges, the person would be answering those charges from prison. But when you insist that I'm going to deal with, 100 issues, 100 charges, you kind of, you scatter your grape shot, frankly.
All right, Femi, let me ask you this. You're a lawyer, and you have, covered. You are head of the legal desk in NT, and you have the experience covering all manner of stories: political, criminal, civil, and what have you. Let us share your experience with respect to these delays, in question.
Am I supposed to?
No, let's share your experience, because they were talking from experience point of view.
She has mentioned the key areas. Investigation is supposed to be completed before you go to court. You don't arrest, detain, and then begin to investigate. The law does not allow for it. That's why our Constitution says anyone arrested must be taken to court within 24 hours. The Constitution could not have been thinking that you will complete investigation in 24 hours. The Constitution expects that you have completed investigation before arresting. But we put the cart before the horse here. We think, and there are provisions in case you think that you have seen someone with the likelihood of committing an offense, and you want to stop the further committal of another part of the offense, you take the elements that you have seen and you have proof for, that you can put charges up for, take that to court. Let's then tell the court that this man may jump bail, because the idea of bail is to ensure that someone comes and continue to attend trial. So you take the bits you have, but say that investigations are still on some particular areas which you think he may compromise if he's allowed to go. The court is the one that will then decide whether he should stay or not.
All right, that's from my colleague Femi, who happens to be a lawyer. Let me inform you that we're still expecting to have the outgoing NBA president, Abubakar Mahmoud, SAN, and of course the incoming one, Paul Usoro, a senior advocate of Nigeria as well, who is the incoming president.
Now, let's look at the annual general conference of the Nigerian Bar Association. It's a forum that all lawyers look forward to for different reasons. I don't know, some enjoy the carnival atmosphere. Some enjoy the education. Some think it's a continuous learning process. And, of course, the NBA expects so. But then, some also think that it should be an opportunity for the Nigerian Bar Association to evaluate the state of the nation. Which of them do you key into most?
Well, you may not be asking the right person, because I'm not a regular at the annual general conference of the Nigerian Bar Association. But I think that I'm not interested in the carnival. I mean, an elderly person like me cannot be too interested in carnival at this age. But certainly, it's always a learning opportunity. I mean, I only arrived on Tuesday evening because of the public holiday that delayed me. But in the day that I've spent, I've learnt a lot. Just from the sessions that we had yesterday. So for me, the learning element, the updating, bringing out new developments in the law is always the most important part of the conference. But then it's essential to me, I think, that a bar association, particularly since it is the only bar association that we have that covers the whole country, it has to reflect on the state of the nation, and it cannot be, it cannot be, how do I put it, focused only on certain areas. I think that in a situation where we are still facing extremely serious security challenges, it was an important opportunity for us to reflect on whether the issue of the rule of law, which the President raised, whether observance of it enhances national security or whether it's an inconvenience. Now, it's important that we recognize that we, as Nigerians, we don't have a Guantanamo Bay where we can put people outside the jurisdiction of the Nigerian courts. And yet, it's only in the last year or so that people who were arrested under the accusation of having been Boko Haram suspects, thousands of them, were finally given their day in court. The Nigerian Bar Association should not have kept quiet while those people, during all the years that those people were in detention. We know that part of the origin of the Boko Haram crisis was the extrajudicial execution of the leader, the then leader of Boko Haram. I'm not saying that Boko Haram was not in existence, or even that it was not a problem, but it didn't assume the dimensions that it assumed until the Nigerian state's reaction was one which ignored the operation of the rule of law. So to me, I think that quite apart from the moral issue and the legal issue, the Bar Association ought also to be able to talk about the practical effect of some of these things and say that it doesn't work morally, it doesn't work legally, and it doesn't work on the ground if you ignore the rule of law. Because people often use this expression, the law is an ass. But actually, when we see people ignoring the law, then we see that actually that is when you realize that they can be the ass, and the law is actually the straight path that we need to follow.
There are people who say that if the Nigerian Bar Association, being a very critical legal body, jumps into either appraising or condemning situations, it would have foreclosed what the process would be if it is tested.
Well, I think the problem of those people is an inability to understand that criticism and comment can be given from an independent perspective. Last month, I was in Denver for the American Association for Justice Convention, which is a particular bar association for trial lawyers, or for what they call plaintiff lawyers. And they had their section for Democratic lawyers, that is, lawyers who align themselves with the Democratic Party, and a section for lawyers who align themselves with the Republican Party. Now, in a situation where there's a lot of carpet crossing, we might not be so ready to align ourselves one way or the other in the Nigerian bar. But the point is that judges can be appointed from anywhere, and they will have their prejudices. The issue is that, do you go into court saying that this judge, because they are A, B, or C, and it may not necessarily be that they are in this political camp or the other, because you will know whether the judge is a man or a woman. You will know possibly whether the judge is a Muslim or a Christian. And you may even know the ethnic identity of the judge. And if all those things are going to be what you look at, identity and beliefs, then you may never go to court with confidence. And yet, you are expected to do so not only in Nigeria, but in any country in the world. So I think that the issue of the Bar Association looking at the state of the nation is not a matter of we are here to support or not support a government. We're here to point out, the Bar Association ought to be able to point out, because at the end of the day, the success of any individual government is not really the concern of the Bar, although some of the ways that things are presented may make it seem so. But the success of any government is supposed to be the advancement of Nigeria as a nation. And that really is the concern of the Nigerian Bar. Should be.
Yes, the concern of the nation, stability of the nation, good governance.
I didn't say stability of the nation.
Or sustenance of good governance, so to speak, because it's part of the theme of this year's conference. Now, this conference is an annual event, in which case lawyers converge to, of course, evaluate the law practice and, again, how it's also working towards sustaining democratic principles and governance. And let me ask this question. Issues have arisen in the past where people have called for legal reforms in this country. Some of us who are not lawyers would like to understand why the reform. Should there be reform? If yes, has there been any effort on the part of the NBA to effect these reforms in question?
Well, certainly there's always room for reform. I'm not able to speak specifically on the role of the NBA in all of the reforms, but certainly the NBA had been involved in many of the reforms, such as the Criminal Justice Act and others, and they were workshopped by the government with the assistance and participation of the NBA. So it's inevitable. And in fact, it was also pointed out to me in another forum that in Britain they used to have problems with tax law and there are always loopholes, until they decided, look, let's get in these lawyers who are always finding these loopholes and see if they can't help us to draft some legislation that will prevent that will block up these loopholes.
Now, you may not have attended the opening ceremony, but you have picked out of part of what the President Buhari stated at the opening ceremony. One other thing he talked about was transparency and accountability, which he reminded lawyers that this government is very concerned about. And in pursuant of that is the Open Government Initiative, OGP, which the federal government has signed into. What can be the role of lawyers or the legal profession in enhancing transparency and accountability in any government?
Well, if you're talking about enhancing accountability and transparency in government, the legal profession, civil society was very much involved even before the Open Government Act in the enactment of the Freedom of Information Act, which was signed into law by the previous administration. And to me, that is the tool that is more likely to be used. But what we find is that many government departments, either because they don't consider themselves obliged or because they actually don't have the information in a retrievable form, are finding it very difficult to answer requests for information under the Freedom of Information Act. So that I think that when we are facing that, because it's one thing to say you have open government, which is where government says, see what we have. And if they show me this, and I say, oh, see what, look, and then, but I want to see what's on page 90.
Yes.
That may be my freedom of information. This may look like open government, but if I'm not able to see what's on page 94, then I have a problem. So I think that the two go hand in hand, and the legal profession, because although it's often seen as something that is of benefit to journalists, when the freedom of information requests are not honored, then the legal profession comes in. And of course, you know that under that legislation, the Attorney General of the Federation, who recently entered the Media Rights Agenda Hall of Shame, I'm sorry to say. But the attorney, or one of his departments, the Attorney General of the Federation is actually supposed to be the repository of making sure that government ministries and departments are keeping their records in such a situation that they can respond under the Act.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your contribution so far, being our lone guest for over 30 minutes now. And, you know, she's actually capable of sustaining this program from the way that she is going. I was going to ask you a question that should be part of the one that Femi just asked on transparency and accountability. And that will be, will have to do with the aiding of corruption by lawyers. There has been this accusation that they aided, because remember that some judges homes were raided, and the currencies of different sorts, collected from their homes and all of that. Now, in this connection, what role should the legal professionals play in curbing corruption?
Sorry, please. Before you answer that question, let's take a break, and we'll be back for more on this program.
You hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter. That might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Now, the red light won't kill you. Move now.
To dey disobey traffic law, they cause accidents. Me, I don't talk, say I no go dey do am again, because change begins with me.
Let's cross the other side of the road.
I will no longer endanger my life crossing the express. Instead, I will use the bridge, because change begins with me.
Oga driver, stop this bus now, won't come down. I be won't carry me past where they go.
Make I dey stop anyhow for road, they cause traffic wahala and accidents. So I go dey stop for the right bus stop, because change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
We thank you for staying with us up to this moment on Good Morning Nigeria. And we've just received Paul Usoro, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and the incoming President of the Nigerian Bar Association. Paul Usoro, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Now, shortly before we came in, we put a question to Ayo Obe, and that has to do with legal practitioners aiding corruption in the society. That's not me saying that. That's what some Nigerians believe, and they would like her to comment on that.
Yeah, I think that my complaint about generalized statements of that nature is that they are never followed through with actuality. Even when you mention currencies being found in the judges' homes after they were invaded, what charges resulted from those allegations? Was the government able to prove its case in court? So I think the generalized statement that lawyers aid corruption, of course, in any profession and in any group, there will be malefactors. But and we've even seen some lawyers who have been disbarred or suspended. We've even had senior advocates have their privileges removed because of malefaction. But I don't think it's good enough to say that because a lawyer goes to court to defend a client that they are aiding corruption. Rather, you should ask why the government agencies which have the obligation to prosecute crimes are allowing corruption to continue because they don't prepare their cases properly.
Okay, so thank you very much. And now to Mr. Paul Usoro, incoming president of the Nigerian Bar Association. For you to contest as president of the Nigerian Bar Association, there would have been some things that you noticed about the legal profession in Nigeria, possibly which you think you want to assist in enhancing and or discouraging. What are the things topmost on your mind about the legal profession as it contributes to democracy in Nigeria?
Well, from the perspective of the contribution of the legal profession to democracy, I think I'll take from where Ayo has ended. Essentially, the primary role of the NBA is to promote and protect the rule of law. And that means ensuring that there is access to justice, also ensuring that there is speedy administration of justice, and also ensuring that the judiciary is independent, and ensuring that the rule of law generally is not tampered with. Now, that is the role of the Nigerian Bar Association, and it's a role that is very critical in these days and as we move into the election year, that is next year. And those are issues that the Nigerian Bar Association would be very, very concerned with and would work to ensure that these are preserved and that the principle of that rule of law is protected. Now, that is one area. There's also the area that relates to us as lawyers ourselves. And I came in on the platform of ensuring that there are certain reforms as far as our association is concerned. I would not give you the raft of reforms. I would only give you the objectives of the reforms. And there are essentially 4 key underpinnings as far as those reforms are concerned. First, reforms that would ensure that there is efficiency in the running of our association. Second, reforms that would ensure that the interests and the confidence of our members they are boosted. And third, reforms that would help us in building an institution out of the NBA. And finally, reforms that would actually give us a moral equity. In other words, if we are condemning the third party, for example, governments, it should not be possible for governments to claim that we have a speck in our eyes and that we need to correct those things. So there are those internal things that we need to also look into and make sure that things are sorted out. And then finally, there is, of course, the welfare of lawyers generally, particularly the young ones. And that is an area that the NBA would be very interested in having to look into.
Well, you talk about reform, and you were at the opening ceremony. You saw the reaction when President Muhammadu Buhari said that lawyers, from his observation, are always not receptive to change, that this government is about change, and that lawyers are not very receptive to change. And a lot of lawyers know that the legal profession is a conservative profession. And now you talk about reform. How does that reform work hand in hand with the change process which government is trying to introduce?
Well, okay, let me start from a general note. I think there is a misperception of lawyers. Lawyers are always very amenable to change. What they need is for you to show them the value proposition, why the change is necessary and how that change is going to be effected. If you present those value propositions to lawyers and you articulate them well, of course they would question you, and if you're able to answer their question satisfactorily, you'll be sure that they'll imbibe the changes that you propose. The fact that I get to become the president of the Nigerian Bar Association is because lawyers accepted the value proposition in regard to the reform agenda that I presented in my manifesto. So perhaps there is that misunderstanding of lawyers that tends to believe that they're not amenable to change or they're not interested in change. Basically, what you need to do is to present the value proposition to them, convince them that this is necessary, and they'll take it. Now, in regard to the government's change agenda, I think if you take it from that primary proposition that I have just made, what you need to do is to communicate and let's understand the thrust of the change agenda. And if the lawyers interrogate that change agenda, and they believe that this is what is good for the society, definitely they are going to embrace it.
Okay. Well, all right. Thank you very much indeed. Now, first of all, let's congratulate you as the incoming president of the NBA. That is the question we put to Ayo Ube initially. And that initial comment, I'd like you to comment with yours with respect to how the legal profession has failed under the democratic dispensation. Well, we can also do a comparison with what existed during the military regime.
Okay. Well, I think there has been whatever we're going to say about the civilian dispensation, and it has its defects, it has certain things that need to be fixed. But I think the defining quality or character of the civilian administration is that there is an enlarged freedom for everyone. It's a lot easier for people to speak their minds without the fear of being persecuted. That freedom that we have in the civilian administration is not exactly the type of freedom that we enjoyed under the military administration. There are more of checks and balances in the administration of a civilian government, and that is very useful. However, vigilance is always the key word, because we can take the example of even some of the developed countries. Without vigilance, you find that even the most liberal democracy, if you have the person who is at the head, who is disposed to totalitarianism, then it is very easy for the country to slide into totalitarianism. So that's where lawyers come in. Even in a civilian administration, they have to be that watchdog that continues to remind everyone that there are certain rights that must be protected, and that we are a country that is governed by laws, and therefore the rule of law is paramount and is superarching. And when we talk about the rule of law, we're actually talking about the architecture from which every other thing derives, including security. And that rule of law is paramount, and it has to be protected. And I believe lawyers are playing that role. Sometimes, as Ayo pointed out, there is a misperception that because lawyers are perhaps defending persons that are not very popular with governments, therefore the perceived attributes of that person, I use that word advisedly, because really until one is convicted, you're presumed to be innocent. But in any case, the perceived attributes or qualities of that person are then attributed also to the lawyer. It really doesn't work that way. The principle of rule of law requires that everybody is entitled to a lawyer, to a defense, particularly when you're before the court of law. And the fact that a lawyer is defending someone who might be charged for some crime doesn't make that lawyer to be an accomplice in regard to those crimes or any other crime. And I guess that might be difficult for non-lawyers to understand, but I think we need to communicate this and to educate society at large that lawyers are not criminals simply because they defend people who are charged with criminal offenses.
I think why the ordinary Nigerian like myself, look at that from the perspective you have explained, is the fact that even after defending a client in the law court, the lawyer still comes out to even argue against the judgment by a superior person, being the judge. And when that goes on, and there are write-ups in newspapers, against judgment that that's already been served, what does that mean? The ordinary man will feel that, well, perhaps this lawyer is actually interested in this client, not just to defend the client.
Let me differentiate that. There are different levels that we can discuss that particular issue. First of all, if you're talking about the lawyer having to appeal against the judgments, that is a right that is guaranteed to the clients by the Constitution. And I would be surprised if a lawyer on his own decides to appeal without the clients requesting that an appeal be lodged. So when the lawyer appeals against the judgments, he's acting on the instructions of the clients. And the principles I have just mentioned about the lawyer-client relationship, they apply exactly the same way that it applies even at the trial instance. Now, there's a different issue you have raised, and that is commenting in regard to the judgments on the pages of newspaper, for example. There are two issues that we can talk about there. First of all, once a judgment has been delivered, it is the right of everyone to comment on that judgment. And you could comment on it and commend the courts, you could comment on it and you criticize the courts. That is a common feature everywhere in the world, in fact in all democracies. And when you read a newspaper article that a lawyer has commented, and it might not even be the lawyer who represented the client in courts, it could be absolutely any other lawyer, and you read the lawyer commenting on the judgments, understand it to be an improvement in scholarship. What the lawyer is trying to do is to perhaps introduce different other dimensions that might not have occurred to the courts. And in subsequent proceedings, in subsequent cases, might not necessarily be that particular case, some other case that have similar facts, the courts might take note of some of those comments and might decide to apply them. And those are the principles, those are the basic reasons why you have that. In fact, it should be encouraged because it's actually an encouragement of scholarship, which is what we should be doing. We should be encouraging people to comment and let it be, the most important thing is let those comments be constructive and let it be guided by the basic principles of law. And that's basically the position of lawyers generally.
All right, Femi, some Nigerians are beginning to react to this conversation by way of tweets, and we just go straight to that, and let's appreciate their own contribution to this particular program. Femi.
We'll start with Osa Moses. The legal profession, he says, is key element to democracy because they interpret the law, strengthen and support democracy. Also, once they allow citizens to know that the law or constitution is all about, it also promotes democracy.
All right, now from Obwene Wolahon, he says the Nigerian judiciary in decades has been less than sterling, from practitioners being involved in many corrupt practices to delay in justice administration, among others. As many as there are in numbers, some of them are grossly corrupt and beneficiaries of corruption.
Change to progress is the next tweet. He says, legal profession needs to do a self-introspection and clean up their image. Public opinion review of legal profession will show how Nigerians view the profession. There is something wrong with the profession, and until legal practitioners are ready to deal with it, it won't change.
All right, now from Shomolu, he says, personnel problems are daunting in Nigeria's judicial system. There is an urgent need for constant training and retraining of judicial officers. This is, as all democracies are peculiar, and Nigeria need homegrown solutions.
Sani Michael Omokoju says, with due respect to the legal profession, I want to say that, with great disappointment, that they have not lived up to my expectations. Where were they when DSS took over the National Assembly? Where were they when SARS were molesting innocent Nigerians? Are they also afraid of social engineering? He says.
All right, Change to Progress says prosecuting agencies most times get it right when dealing with the poor, but when dealing with the elites, we always have excuses for prosecution failures. It is not that elites have a way of corrupting the judiciary. How does the state government get a perpetual injunction from investigation?
And back to Ogbeni Omogbolahon. If there is anything that needs serious attention by the judiciary, apart from purging itself of its corrupt members, it's administration of criminal justice. There are many languishing in jail. One of a crime they know nothing about. Many have been in prison for years without trial.
All right, Walahon again continued and said, when President Muhammad Buhari said the judiciary was a cog in the wheel of corruption fight, many descended on him. But then he has access to the information unknown to many of us. We all witnessed how foreign and local currencies were discovered in some judges' apartments. The judiciary needs a purging. And before we go on this, Femi, there is this one from Reasoning. He said insufficient fund tends to impede the efficiency of the research in matters relating to the judiciary. For our democracy to thrive, we need to fund our judiciary.
Now let's look at this, and I would wish that Ayo and the incoming president will take it. Try as the legal profession does to make people understand its responsibilities. We have seen from the tweet that the larger percentage of Nigerians still think that this profession has some elements of doubt, that people don't want to trust the legal profession. Why is that so?
I would attribute it to two things. One, the legal profession is actually a very conservative profession. Lawyers, particularly advocates, are not encouraged to self-advertise or actually to indulge in newspaper publications, writing articles, etc. And therefore, what you might find, that image management is not something that lawyers are used to. And once you do not have that image management, it gives room sometimes for misperception. That is perhaps one area that the NBA would have to look at to educate people in regard to what the roles of lawyers are. That is number one. Number two, generally, and rather unfortunately, we have a practice in Nigeria of feeding gossips. And once gossips are fed, the general attitude of Nigerians is that there is no smoke without fire. And sometimes, truly, you might find that there is truly no fire, that it might simply be an artificial smoke sometimes. But you find the people find it difficult to differentiate between artificial fire, artificial smoke, and the real smoke that comes from fire. That also feeds that perception. The third thing, of course, is yes, like any other group of people or association, you would definitely have some people that might infract. And, you know, one bad egg sometimes tends to spoil the whole crate. And so when you have that minority that might not behave well, the tendency is because people have heard, and that is usually publicized, and that tends to color the perception of the larger majority of law-abiding, properly behaved lawyers. I think in that regard, maybe it would also be useful that when you have disciplinary machinery, and we do have disciplinary machinery, and then some of our members are disciplined, let people also understand that in fact we have a process of cleansing ourselves. Maybe that process would need to be strengthened. And once that is done, and then that process works, then of course it would also be clear to people, and it would be clear to lawyers also, that if you infract, there is a punishment for it.
All right.
Can she take her opinion on that?
I don't think, Paul, you can say on the one hand that lawyers are writing articles and opinions about judgments, and at the same time say that we are not allowed to, that we are conservative profession, we don't write newspaper articles and so on. These days, you come out of court and if it's a case of that nature, the cameras are there and the lawyers are, with their bands fluttering and their wig in their hand, on their gowns on their backs, they're talking to the media. So I don't think that it's really so much that the public doesn't see enough of lawyers or what they do. I would preface my comments, however, by remembering a wonderful day that happened for me last year when I had received a notice from the Court of Appeal saying, you have a judgment coming up. And I was saying, please go to court and tell them we haven't even argued the appeal. Then another one was that judgment was to be delivered. And the third one was that we were going to court, the other side were not coming, but I had to go for a trial. So I went for the trial, and eventually the court did not sit. But by the time I got back to the office, the three judgments, I'd had three judgments, and they were all in my favor. And the Court of Appeal said, yes, you didn't come to argue the appeal, but your brief was here, and we determined the case on your brief. The other one, the judgment, we had gone through the trial, and we got the judgment. And the third one, the other side didn't come, we got judgment in default. And I'm saying that because this constant mantra of a corrupt judiciary, I mean, you don't have to, because no lawyer is going to come out and say, I go and see judges, I saw the judge, and so on and so forth. And the fact is that judicial corruption is not something that happens in the open. But it's unfortunate that what happened when the judges' houses were invaded continues to be described as a sting. It was not a sting. A sting is where somebody who looks like an ordinary member of the public goes and entraps a judge. After all, ordinary journalists in Ghana were able to do it.
Yeah.
And consequences followed. But in Nigeria, we are supposed to have secret services. And I emphasize, I mean, they are state security, but they're also supposed to be secret services. And yet, their own was, I mean, talk about V-set armies with strength and arms and noise and flashes of publicity, but no, after the smoke cleared and the mirrors were broken, there was nothing to see. And this is the problem, that if you're going to really be concerned about the administration of justice, yes, you need an independent judiciary, but you also need a judiciary that is monitored. And you can't monitor it if I'm now coming on inspection to the court, and then everybody sits up. It's like what happens when the vice president is coming to Lagos. All the trailers disappear into the trailer parks. But when he's gone, they're back on the bridges. So
who does the monitoring then?
That is what I'm saying, that it is not something that you have, as I say, you have your security services. The DSS could have done something, but instead, because they wanted to make a noise and get instant publicity rather than the hard slog, they basically lost the advantage that they would have had.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Ayube. Let's return again to the issue of the NBA conference. Why the choice of the theme? I'm asking the incoming president because I believe you're one of those that, of course, has structured this year's conference. Why the theme of the conference, transition, transformation, and sustainable institutions?
Well, actually, I wasn't one of those who structured or planned this year's conference. I think I'll be actively involved in planning the next year's conference.
From next year.
But getting into the minds of those who planned the conference, what I believe motivated their having to come up with that theme There are two sets of transition that we're going to have this year and next year. There is the transition in regard to the NBA from one administration to another. But at the national level, there's going to be a transition from one administration to another after the elections. So I should imagine they might have been thinking about things like that. In terms of transformation, literally every society or every association needs to be dynamic, to reinvent itself, recreate itself, and that's some form of transformation. And that's a fairly constant in human society. And I should imagine that they were thinking about how we could re-engineer ourselves as Nigerians, and we could re-engineer ourselves as the Nigerian Bar Association, as lawyers generally. And then, of course, the issue of sustainable institutions. Ayo has just mentioned something. There's a theme that came out, a sub-theme that came out on the second day, that's after the opening ceremony. And that was a question of whether we need to have strong institutions rather than strong men. I think there is a general belief that our institutions are actually quite weak and they are susceptible to not standing firm sometimes, depending on who is in power. And that becomes a problem. Do you need strong institutions or you need strong men? Now, there was an angle to that that was brought up during the session, that perhaps you need strong men and strong institutions, and that weak men in strong institutions, those weak men endanger the strong institution, and they could actually erode the strong institution. It would take a strong man heading a strong institution not to subvert processes when the interests of when his own interest or the interest of others might be involved. So I believe that might have been what informed the association coming up with that third leg of the theme, sustainable institutions.
Now, as we wind down this program, let's begin to look at what the NBA should be doing to help government and governance. That this 58th Annual General Conference had the attendance of President Muhammadu Buhari, had the attendance of the Ghanaian president, had the attendance of the vice president, all of them talking about key areas of development, should let you know that the legal profession is needed by government. And one of the areas that cut across what the president said the next day when the vice president came on Monday was that they also want economic justice and social justice. Does the NBA have any role in this?
But of course, the NBA has a role in ensuring that there is economic justice, that there is social justice, and more importantly, justice in the sense of the law. Lawyers are the ones who have to prosecute and defend positions before the courts of law. They're also the ones, as one of the persons who wrote in pointed out, that we also have a role in regard to having to prepare legislation and also to advocate on the interpretation of legislation or advise on the interpretation of legislation. Now, the role of lawyers actually is not necessarily adversarial as far as government is concerned. I think government needs to understand that lawyers are partners in the process of having to develop or ensure that there is social justice, that there is economic justice. Lawyers are partners with governments. The fact that we are partners with government does not also mean that we would always agree with government's position. We would sometimes advise governments that they could have another look at certain positions that relates to issues of importance as far as the nation is concerned. we would make those inputs to governments. We may not always make those inputs publicly. Where it is necessary, we would also make it known that this is what our position is. But we would continue to make those inputs, let governments know that there are alternative ideas or viewpoints that might not necessarily be what they may have been looking at, which would be beneficial for all the parties.
All right, all right. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And at this point, we have to wrap up this segment of Good Morning Nigeria for today. First of all, I'd like to appreciate Ayo Obe, who's a legal practitioner. In fact, specifically for sustaining this program as long as she did before the arrival of Mr. Ustoro. Thank you, madam. Thank you indeed.
You're welcome.
Yes, and Paul Ustoro finally made it. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, of course, the incoming president of the Nigerian Bar Association. Thank you for, of course, coming after all said and done. Thanks
you very
indeed.
much. Thank you.
All right. Now, we go to sports now as we continue with the rest of the program.